great to get your insight on things. Obviously, we've got a massive card here at the O2 in London. Silva and Bisping. I mean, what was your reactions when you first heard that you would be commentating for that fight?
Well, it's really exciting. I mean, I've commentated on Michael Bisping fights before, and our careers have somewhat shadowed each other because I've kind of followed him up into the sport, and he's just been around for such a long time. He's had so many impressive performances in the UFC. And then Anderson Silva, I mean, I was fortunate enough to be in London for Anderson Silva's fights before he signed with the UFC. And we knew then, you could tell by the way he was moving that there was something special going on, and he was going to go on to something amazing. And since then, I've really kind of just watched at a distance. I mean, I've been in and around him, I've chatted to him a few times and stuff, but this gives me a whole new level of involvement with this card, and I mean, Anderson Silva being a part of it just makes it a lot more special for me.
So obviously with the kind of recent things that he's been through, obviously the knockout and then the leg break and then the suspension, do you think we're going to see the same Anderson Silva on Saturday?
I certainly think he looks like it. I certainly think, particularly at the open workouts, he was moving really well. He seemed very relaxed. He seemed much more himself. And I don't think we can say that about the Nick Diaz fight. I think in the Nick Diaz fight, he looked tentative, he looked hesitant. Particularly the first 3 rounds, he just didn't really look like he was confident to engage with him. And I mean, ultimately, it was such a massive turnaround. I mean, for me, I know what it was like to be fighting regularly, and all of a sudden it just stops, and you kind of feel a bit lost. So then to be Anderson Silva and to go from being the best in the world to then getting knocked out and then breaking your leg, like, I can't help but feel that there's going to be like a rush in his mind to get back. Like, I've got to get back and reclaim what's mine because time's passing me by. He was almost 40, and that's got to be in the back of his mind. And I think that the Diaz fight was a bit rushed, in my opinion. I think he may have pushed through rehab a bit too quick, and he just didn't look comfortable in there. He didn't look himself. But as the fight went on, we got into the 4th round, and even the 5th round a little bit, he started to relax. He started to try a few Anderson Silva-esque techniques that we'd not seen early in the fight. And I think at the open workouts, he kind of just shows that he's back there again. I mean, he obviously doesn't look like he's aged at all. He doesn't look any slower. His punches have still got a beautiful snap to them. So I really think, especially with fighting Michael Bisping in London, he knows he's got to step up, and he knows that there's not going to be another chance after this. Even if he just has a bad performance, it's going to be the last time we'll see him, I think, and he doesn't want that.
So do you think that he could get back to the belt, or do you think that's maybe a no, or are we going to wait to see what he comes with on Saturday?
Yeah, it's a difficult one to know to say before the fight. I mean, definitely he's got the potential, and if we assume that he beats Michael, then definitely I want to see him back in that class than it was when he was holding the belt. I mean, obviously Chris Weidman alone is a real danger to him. I think Luke Rockhold's a good matchup for him, given the fact that they're both southpaw, they're both quite tall, rangy fighters. But Rockhold's very good with scrambles. He's good at taking the back in quick exchanges where people wouldn't expect him to. He's quite agile, particularly for the size of him. And then you look at the 2 other guys. You've got Jacare and Yoel Romero. I mean, I wouldn't want to fight either of them. And even if I was Anderson Silva, I wouldn't want to fight either of them. So you've got to think that even if he does get this win on Saturday night, where does he go from then? Do you see him stepping up and fighting for the title straight away, or does he have to fight one of the contenders? They're all tough fights, and it really depends on where Anderson Silva's at and what he sees with his career. And I think if Anderson's honest with himself, I think that would depend on Saturday night. I think he has to prove a part of it to himself, that he's still capable of being the champion.
And kind of going through that as well, especially like a leg break as well. I mean, how do you think that puts you mentally, especially going into a fight and being knocked out as well, like he did?
Yeah, I mean, the leg break alone makes me hesitant to throw low kicks. But after I watched it, I was like, I can't imagine how awful that must feel. And then to know how much of a setback it is for him as well at that point in his career where he was really at the pinnacle. There's got to be a psychological hold up there, which may have explained the hesitancy in the Nick Diaz fight. But I just don't know. I mean, I think the reality is with the knockout, I think he knows that the style that he has always had that risk element to it, And I think that the difference with Weidman is that most of the time Anderson was able to move just out of range and they would fall short because they weren't confident to cover that distance. Whereas, I mean, just, you heard in the corner after that first round what Ray Longo said to him, just punch a hole in his chest. Just that mentality alone made him cover that extra distance and have Anderson over his heels when he hit that right hook, the left hook. So I think Anderson can watch that fight and be like, well, yeah, it was a silly mistake I made, and that would have happened to anybody in that circumstance. So I think the leg break has got to be much more of a psychological hang-up for him than anything. But I think he may have put that to bed with the Nick Diaz fight.
So how do you envision the fight going down on Saturday? I know it's a tough one to try and...
It is tough, and I try and stay away from predictions when I'm commentating, but I have to be realistic about both fighters and how they win, because either scenario is possible. For Michael, it's all about conditioning. It's about work rate. It's about working hard from bell to bell, throwing as many shots at Anderson Silva as he can, and constantly putting Anderson Silva either on the back foot, up against the fence, or just in a defensive shell where he doesn't feel like he can start setting Michael Bisping up. With Anderson Silva, he has to slow the fight down to his pace. He has to gauge Michael distance at a range, and he has to start thinking about openings and setting him up. He's a very cerebral fighter, and I have no doubt that Anderson Silva knows right now what he wants to finish the fight with, because he just seems like that kind of person. He seems like he picks out a game plan, he lays it out for him, and then to keep him interested, to make it more challenging for him, he will play to that game plan, kind of like he did with the Chael Sonnen fight. I know he lost the first 4 rounds, but in the documentary we recorded before, he said he was going to triangle him in the 5th. And that to me is Anderson Silva all over. He says what he's going to do, just like Conor McGregor does, really, but he's not as brash with it. Like, he likes to hide it, he likes to be a bit cautious of it, But at the same time, he is a cerebral fighter. It's not about volume for Anderson Silva. It's about that single shot that changes the fight. And in order to slow the pace down, he has to slow the pace down if he's going to land that shot, because Michael Bisping will just steamroll over him for 25 minutes if he doesn't.
Okay, we've got a lot of UK talent on the card as well. So what kind of fights are you looking forward to seeing?
There's a lot of good fights coming up. There's a lot of really good UK fighters on the card. Arnold Allen, who sat right across the other side of the lobby from us, I'm really excited about him. Obviously, one fight into his UFC career. He's young, he's talented, he's a great athlete, he's very explosive. I just expect big things from him generally. Mike Wilkinson against Amir Khani, that is a fight for the next featherweight contender emerging. One of those guys is going to step up into the limelight. I think Mike Wilkinson needs to put a good 2016 together, and starting with a win over Amir Khani is a good one. Otherwise, Mako and Amir Khani's already got those 2 impressive wins in quick succession, and he's less than 2 minutes in the octagon, so he's very much up there as a contender as well. And that's a tough fight for Mike, but it's an important one for both of them, and an important one for featherweights in Europe. But I just think up and down the card we've got some great fighters. Bradley Scott looks very calm, very focused. He's very big for the weight. Who else we got? Scott.
Tom Breeze.
Tom Breeze goes without saying. He's looked unbelievable in his first 2 fights with the UFC. He's looked really untouchable. If it wasn't for the fact that he felt like he could get them out of there in the first round, he could have just dominated the fight from start to finish. So I like his approach. It's technical. It's conscious. You can tell he's got a good team of guys around him. And there's not a rush. He has the ability to get in there and blast people out of the water in 10-15 seconds, I'm sure. But he doesn't. He takes his time, he measures them, he starts to feel them out, and that's the sign of a talented striker, that he's going to go a long way, a long way in his career, because he's got the physicality to back up the technique, he's got the technique to back up his athleticism. I think he's the full package. I really do. I'm excited for every Brit on the card. I think we could have a real resurgence of UK mixed martial arts on Saturday night. That's what I'm hoping for.